Well, hello.
Hello.
I can't help.
Good afternoon.
I can't help but start with this incredible piece of artwork that you were inspired to create for President Donald Trump. And we had the honor of doing the unveiling yesterday. Can you, before we dive into all the genius behind this man, tell me a little bit about this statue and the representation?
Well, first of all, I can't take credit as its creator. It's a co-creation, a collaborative effort. 6,000 people, patriots, came together to produce what we call the Patriot, I guess is officially. So a 15-foot version of this statue was created. Its nickname is Don Colossus, but it's the Patriot. And that 15-foot bronze sculpture was brought to the inauguration. But I was asked to make magic happen without a lot of time and almost got it into the Capital One event, but changing the schedule for the inauguration, a day before is, well, we got that close. And then we were gonna plop it out front of the Kennedy Center with permission from everyone in DC, but decided to wait for the president's schedule. And so it started as a 15-foot tall bronze sculpture of Donald Trump from the famous moment when he stood up after being nearly assassinated, but only grazed, turned his head in the exact right moment. But it became gold-plated. And so, yeah, yesterday was the unveiling, the ribbon cutting of the Patriot, which is a 15-foot tall gold version of this at his favorite hotel, which is the property here in Miami, Doral. And so that was a wonderful event, which you also got to attend.
It was incredible. I snuck away from all of you fantastic people that get to be here, but I brought him here for us to pick your brain and chat with you a little bit about the stuff that you're working on. And aside from...
Just last point on this.
Yes.
So these miniatures are known as the Patriot Awards, which are like the Oscars. So during the inauguration, the first was done. Now that the official unveiling of the Golden Patriot is in place, now the next award shows will be going for the following years. And so, Patriots deserve something akin to Oscars too.
Yes, you started a trend, so this will become a trophy for people that are true patriots in our country. I love that. So I wanted to kind of dive into some of the things that you're working on. So we're in 2026, and we're here at the Global Family Office Investment Summit. You are the pioneer of the digital currencies. Where do you see the world of digital currency going as the times are evolving faster than the blink of light?
Well, we've come a long way. How many of you are into cryptocurrency? All right, well, obviously the world has changed largely thanks to the President of the United States, our president. If you'd worked in this industry and you had been a pioneer and agent of change, you were you were at great risk of being a victim of lawfare. There was a thing known as Operation Choke Point and Operation Choke Point 2.0, which debanked you, had you investigated, potentially, sued by regulators or perhaps even indicted. And that's including all the biggest companies. Pretty much, I think I'm one of the only ones that never had any problem that was high profile, but almost any person that worked on the front line of bringing financial inclusion, bringing transparency, bringing all of these things that this technology enables forward was at great risk. And that's all changed. Last year was effectively the time where we went from night to day. That big an event. And now that we have a president in office that understands the importance of this technology, now that we have a cabinet in place and regulators in place that understand the importance of this technology, and the legislative branch or Congress, also a majority of which recognize the importance of this technology, it has changed the world, and it doesn't matter where you live. I've gone around the world educating the world's governments, most of them now, on this, and the answer, just like most big family offices, and I'm sure many of you probably felt this way historically, but the main thing governments would say is, this is interesting, I get it, maybe, something we'd like to do, but we can't do anything until the United States of America decides its position on this technology. And like a lot of family offices would say the same thing, well, what's the U.S. going to do? And so regulatory uncertainty, and certainly an industry that is bringing great change, is usually vilified and attacked, as pioneers often are. That's all changed. And so you're going to be seeing this happen all over the world, implementation. It takes a minute. But, I think almost every government in the world is either doing something, enabling something, or is far along in the reconsidering of their position on it. And it's changed, a lot of things just in terms of what it's done. Take President Bukele. I led the first delegation down to assist the El Salvadorian government with their implementation. At the time that happened, only 30% of the population had access to financial services, or, were banked, not by our definition, but call it banked. Within a year of that legislation taking place, it was 70%. And this is just one of those things. Often we, as the fortunate that have access to basic financial tools and literacy, it's a life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. It's an essential element for the pursuit of happiness. It's effectively a basic need at this point. And so that's happening. Obviously, more things continuing to happen. RWAs and the idea of tokenization of effectively everything, from commodities to securities, is going to continue to transform the world that we live in a positive way. So, it's all happening. If you don't know anything about it, if you haven't done anything, the basic advice I've always given, and it's never varied, I've never encouraged anyone to invest in this. I only encourage people to invest in themselves. If you've never done anything, this is happening. It's here. There's no putting the cat back in the bag. Go buy your first $100 of Bitcoin and learn how it works. And with that, you can make informed decisions. It's hard to be taken advantage of if you're thinking for yourself and not just blindly following others.
That's incredible, and that's such a profound way to answer that question. To follow up with, since we're at the family office and there's a lot of investors, entrepreneurs who are looking to diversify their portfolio, although many investors that I work with stay in their lane, I happen to notice that you are diversified in so many different sectors of investing. What is your favorite? We talked about a little bit about real estate, but you're just kind of taking risks in different sectors. How do you help people overcome that fear of going into a different market and taking a risk?
Well, most people are, not in a bad way, but victims of their own success. They're very comfortable. And comfort, is a trap, that prevents growth in many ways. Growth comes from being bold, right? The future favors the bold. It comes from courage, right? So I hope to encourage you to take more risk, not necessarily, from a financial perspective, but in your own lives, right? The curiosity, is the journey of learning that inspires me and pushes me to continue to always do more. But, in my case, I grew up starring in movies as a kid, and, once I became a movie star, I was like, well, I've already won this game. Do I want to continue doing this and milking it, or do I want to go learn something new? And so I quit acting at 16. I think Grok just verified it, to become the youngest successful entrepreneur in the world. And at 16, raised $88 million to build the first streaming media company. This was back in 1997. And so my manager and my agent were like, what? You're quitting acting? I go, yeah, it just doesn't feel like my calling anymore. And they're like, people would do anything to be in your position. I go, yeah, that's nice. And they're like, well, what are you going to do? I'm like, well, I'm going to become an internet entrepreneur. They're like, what are your qualifications? Where did you graduate from? What makes you think that you could possibly do that? And, that risk is the ability to step outside of your comfort zone into the unknown. And then once you've done that once, it gets a little easier, and that's become the pattern of my life. As soon as I've become successful at something, I want to go do the next thing. That's how I play the game of life. I get bored playing the same game repetitively. It gets too easy. So instead I want to learn healthcare. So I go buy a bankrupt hospital effectively on fire and run in and try and figure it out, not knowing anything about running a hospital. So this is how I go through life and learn. That's called paying tuition. And it's education, trial by fire.
That's incredible. And I'm an artist like yourself, and I think being an artist helps with that, taking the risk, because we get bored all the time and we want to learn, or at least I speak for myself.
I can tell you that's where I take the risk, because otherwise I'd be bored.
Yeah, I'm bored and I want to learn.
Not hard enough.
No, exactly.
Harder, please.
So, I want to mention this to you. Some of my entrepreneur friends have worked 20, 30, 40 years and have neglected their artistic side, and then they tapped into it and they became better investors and better entrepreneurs and leaders in their community. I feel like a lot of people are so obsessed, myself included, into building something of substance, but then ignore the creative side, which actually is a complement to our genius and becoming exceptional people in this planet and doing exceptional things like yourself. You're like an example of that, taking constant risk. Let me ask you, I know we're out of time. What is one big risk that you haven't taken that you want to take in the next, let's say, 2 to 5 years?
What's left? I'm doing a lot of things in, back to the arts, media and culture, right? Media and culture are an essential element, and if you've not spent any time trying to find that aspect of yourself, it exists in everyone. And the arts is a way that, call it, God communicates with us. And so it's an area in which everyone should explore. But I spend a lot of time, focused on religion. And I spend a lot of time with the world's religious leaders. One thing that I'm, very interested in is how do we bring people, closer to their faith? Because the world right now is a little lost. We're living in a scary time in many ways, where the future looks uncertain. AI and other things, what's it looking like? War all over the world. It's a scary time, and people are trying to figure out, what am I doing here? What's my future? And the answer ultimately comes from faith. It's having faith in the future and being right with yourself. It's the ability to look in the mirror and feel good about how you've shown up in the world, that you're going to leave it better than you found it. And so there's some exciting things that I'm exploring to help people reconnect with that aspect of self and understand that everybody's life has purpose and that you're here for a reason, and to help you find that reason so that you can fulfill your destiny, fulfill your purpose for existence. And I believe we all have that. And so I've done politics, I've done media and culture, and so I think one of the most powerful things you can do to impact people in the best way is help them find that meaning and that purpose in life. And for all of us, thank God we're all different and unique. Otherwise, again, it would be very boring.
Yes, exactly. And you are an incredible soul. It's an honor to have you here with us, and especially with this piece of art here. Do we have time for questions? Are we all set?
Well, there might be one
Yeah.
thing just to add that might be useful, since we're not talking about kind of markets, but might be informative. Certainly, since we touched on cryptocurrency, the main thing for anyone that's investing in that market is trying to understand, when does the market shift from bull to bear, right? Cryptocurrency is the kind of rawest investment for human sentiment. It's effectively fear and greed at its most pure form. And so the market, kind of like a beach, if there's a shark attack, something happens, it turns into a bear market, everybody gets out of the water. And so normally there's a catalyst, like an FTX or a Mt. Gox or a Terra Luna, something that basically causes the market to retract. And then it usually stays in that state for some period of time, slowly in decline, certain moments, until there's a catalyst, an event, something that reignites the market and excites people to be comfortable to all get back in the water. From a timing perspective, because it works in cycles, that's expected to happen by October this year. But Tether, one of the companies I co-founded years ago, that might be one of them, because they're, it's pretty public that they're raising at a $500 billion valuation. If that were to be announced that it's closed, that's the sort of thing that would probably get investors very excited about the level of enterprise or equity value being created. And so just a piece of advice, if you're in the market, I'd be watching for those events that are going to catalyze the market. And for those that aren't, this is a technology that's here to stay. It's worth buying your first $100 of Bitcoin and learning what it's all about, because it's an incredible journey of learning in terms of the impact it can have on everyone's lives. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, everybody, thanks, Brock.